Welcome, book sniffers, back to Sherlock Pages. I thought I'd do an update on what it's been like to run an independent bookshop for a full calendar year now. 2024 was our first year. Our top 10 bestsellers of 2024. I wanted to talk about some of the highs and some of the lows of that first year of trading as an independent bookshop. There's something about this novel, it sticks with people for their whole lives. And it feels like the right time to do this because a lot of hard work came to fruition in recent weeks. We had a number of media opportunities that we were able to take advantage of, which were really nice for me and the team. Firstly, we were on the cover of Bookworld magazine, which was really cool. They did an article on us and there was a profile on me, looking very serious actually. And they called me the bookman of Catherine Hill, which was quite cool. We were also featured just this week in the Bookseller, which is the main UK trade magazine for publishing. So all of the publishers, all of the literary agents, all of the bookshops will get the Bookseller. We haven't had a physical copy arrive yet, so I'll put the digital article here or something, somewhere like that. And I'll put links in the description. We were featured on the BBC radio this week for local radio for our region. And I was interviewed about Sherlock Pages and my upcoming book, Forgotten Churches. Here is Forgotten Churches. So for anyone who doesn't know me, by the way, I'm Luke Sherlock. That's why we're called Sherlock Pages. I'm the co-founder of the Bookshop and I am a massive heritage nerd, basically. I love old buildings, anything to do with history. And that's why here at Sherlock Pages, we're really focused on conservation as quite a broad concept. And I'll talk about this actually as we go on in this video. But we focus on landscape, nature, history and heritage. Because my previous career to this was working in sustainability and energy. The environment, environmentalism, sustainability has been like my head interest since I was very young. I've always thought we need to solve these problems and approach the world with innovation, dynamism, and with care. But then my heart passion is all on, of course, I have a lot of heart passion for nature as well, but I have this really burning interest in historic architecture and buildings and great stories of history. So that's kind of where our unique stock came from. But we do have a lot of fiction as well, just so you know. This is our fiction section here, actually. We specialise in historical fiction, in climate and environmental fiction, fiction in translation, and the top row up here, which you might not be able to see, is our favourite novels. We have a lot of folklore and we have a lot of novellas and short stories as well. So we're kind of expanding our vision, which I'll get into. However, I wanted to talk about some of the highs and some of the lows of that first year of trading as an independent bookshop. So I thought I'd go through 3 lows to start with, get them out of the way, and then 3 highs, just to give you a little bit of a feeling for what it's like. So the first low light I have on my list that came to mind was rude customers. And it's probably really unfair because the customers at Sherlock Pages are so nice. Generally, we attract people who are interested in all those topics I discussed. Frome is a really independent-minded place. A lot of the shops are independent and there are some really good values here. People love craft, they love nature, they love art, they love sustainability. And so I think the vibe of our shop matches the town really well. So by and large, we get some really good customers. But every now and then, there is someone who has to come in and just try and make you feel really bad. I talked on one video about a guy who came in, took one look left, one look right, and then he said, oh, they've hardly got any books, and then he stormed off. And honestly, that's the least of it in terms of how rude some people can be. But you're always going to get that in retail. So for anyone who's doing customer facing entrepreneurialism, I'd say you just have to kind of ignore it. I know I'm not doing that now, but I am letting a little bit of it off my chest. But to be honest, it is so minimal compared to the amount of positivity we get here daily. Obviously, we get literary snobs as well who think that they know literature so well, and they'll take a particular issue with how we've written one of our recommendation cards, and they'll be just searching for a problem in their minds. I mean, you're always going to get a bit of that as well, but it's not really a big deal. And the longer we go on, the less it impacts us. We kind of just, shrug our shoulders and kind of move on. So that's another thing. I think that's a lesson for you. Just, try and put it all in context. The second thing that I've got on my list of lowlights is really bad days where it is raining. It is February, as it is now, and you have your worst day of the year. That happened last week, and actually it's incredible how close we were to our lowest sales from last year, this year. So we have noticed footfall increasing as we've kind of bedded in, become more established. Having said that, last week we did a day where we sold £53.96 of books. And so that broke the record by just a few pence. Poor Kerry, my colleague who was in that day, they can be really disheartening those days. We don't have many of them. We're usually well above that, but for some reason, it's chucking it down with rain. It's freezing. We live in a small town. There's no tourists visiting that day. Everyone who's in the town has stayed away. You just don't get any sales, and that can be really, really difficult. I think 30 years ago, people might have had to come into town for certain essential goods, and they might be drawn into the bookshop when they see something in the window, or just to escape the rain when they are here. But honestly, there are days in town when the weather is furiously bad, where they just don't turn up at all. So we have to ride those waves and keep our positive mindset. In the first year, that was more difficult than it is now because we know that things change and there are patterns and shifts. But retail is so strange. The retail gods always seem to have something up their sleeve for you. So out of nowhere, you'll have a brilliant day, and then all of a sudden you'll just have a real stinker. And that can even come on a Saturday when you're expecting to be busy. When that happens, it is really humbling and frustrating, but you go again and it's going to change. The third point I've put is the stress of disappointing customers. I think we have really high standards for ourselves and we don't always meet them. I know that might sound like a strange thing to say as someone who's a business owner and obviously trying to represent us in the best light. But there are so many circumstances that are sometimes out of your control, sometimes in your control, that go wrong. And I found that when I felt like we were letting someone down, I took it really hard, and I'm trying to get better at balancing the tension of, yes, still really wanting to do the best by all of our customers with the reality of running a small business, which is you're juggling constantly everything, and it's so difficult. So I had a few examples. After Christmas, I forgot that our opening times wouldn't change back to what they were before Christmas. It was a really kind of obscure thing in terms of our opening hours, and basically someone turned up on a Sunday and we weren't open because we were temporarily open for Sundays throughout Christmas. And I felt really bad. That person left us a scathing review on Google. Kind of fair enough. I think we deserve a bad review for that. I wish we hadn't have got one, but it happens, and it was always going to happen. So learning to deal with that stress, I think it is a low light, but again, you can take the positives. So enough of that. Let's get on to the highlights. We've had the low lights. They're out the way. I thought I'd put it first. The highlights are many, 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 many. But I would say hiring our first staff member, Kerry, has been an absolute highlight because we've been able to share our passion for these books and grow our stock and our expertise. And I feel like we're starting to feel like a little, family here. And there is real human connection and a sense of place, a sense of home. And, Kerry was absolutely key to that. She works here 3 days a week now. We've just been able to hire a new member of staff, Sophie, who's working here as well as a bookseller. yeah, just sharing our passions and our enthusiasm. There are so many other people as well who are kind of wrapped up in the Sherlock and Pages world, probably because I've roped them into giving book recommendations or helping on a shop project or something like this. So we had a first birthday celebration where we had about, I don't know, I think 30 people who'd helped out in the shop or been a particular friend of the shop, and it was just lovely to be gathered together. So yeah, that first hire of Kerry, and then all of the people who are kind of turning Sherlock and Pages into a real home. The second point I wrote as a highlight was our author interviews. It seemed that within a very short space of time, we were able to attract some really good authors to interview on our YouTube channel. And although the channel was quite slow going last year, that was absolutely fine because we just wanted to do it and to test our equipment, test my ability. It was quite nerve-wracking to interview authors. I came from a totally different career into being a bookseller, and I found that when I did my first YouTube interview, I actually did it with one of our friends who is a literary agent, Becky Brown. You can check that out. And I was quite nervous because it's not my world, or it wasn't my world. And I felt like through these author interviews, we were able to convey really interesting stories to our customers. It added so much value when a customer came in and said they were buying a book. For example, I'll just pick one. Wild Atlantic Women. I'll talk about this more, but we got Grania Lyons, the author of this, on for an interview. And it's really, really helped us to discuss this book with customers. We're able to direct them to that video. And it's just brought a lot of value to me personally as well, to have connections with authors, explore their ideas, explore their motivations. And that's what it's all about, you know. So on so many levels, doing those author interviews has been lovely. I hope we can do more this year. I don't want to pack the schedule out, but, you know, if we can keep on doing, I don't know, maybe one a month or one every 2 months, we'll take those opportunities as they come. The third point I've got written as a highlight was expanding the vision for our stock. So Sherlock and Pages, I think initially when we were writing down our plan for it, was all about nature, countryside, and I think I realised early on, even before we opened, that I would be expanding that vision into some of my other passions like heritage buildings, history. I always wanted to have some fiction, but I've gained confidence as a bookseller, and I feel like our vision has slightly evolved, and that's a good thing. I feel like people still very much know that we're niche and that they will get something specific, but our customers have started describing it as, oh, that's Sherlock and Pagesy. That feels Sherlock and Pagesy. And I think everyone here knows what that means now. It's nature, landscape, history, heritage, maybe things that you wouldn't have seen elsewhere or that aren't so common that we're highlighting. But yeah, expanding the stock has been super nice. And on that point, I want to give a sample of what Sherlock and Pagesy might mean through going through our top 10 bestsellers of 2024, the top 10 books in our first full year of trading. So that might give you an idea of what we're all about, and also it might give you some idea of a new read, because these are the really popular titles in our shop. And I think some of them are popular because we have promoted them, we've recommended them. And that's really, really nice to see. So let's dive into it. So coming in at number 10 is the evocatively titled Winters in the World by Eleanor Parker. So this tells the story of the changing of the seasons in Anglo-Saxon England, and it references Anglo-Saxon poetry. I really want to do a video on this book in particular because we picked it in our book club last year. Currently the book club is on a bit of a hiatus whilst we rethink our plans for it and make sure we can do it really well. But I do owe people who read this a video, and I'm hoping to go and visit some Anglo-Saxon sites in England and discuss this quite beautiful and poetic book with readers. So this has been very popular. I think it's one of those seasonal books, but it does cover the whole year. And Winters in the World is kind of a description of how many winters in the world have we had a really atmospheric way of thinking about time. Coming in at number 9 is Lust for Life by Irving Stone, the fictional retelling of the life of Vincent van Gogh. And we did a fantastic YouTube interview with Simon Elliott, who is a Van Gogh expert, an art expert, and he'd written a graphic biography of Vincent. And I'm a really big Vincent van Gogh enthusiast. This was actually written in the 30s, but it doesn't feel dated, and it's based on the letters that Vincent wrote to his brother Theo throughout his life. Magnificent letters. I would highly recommend them as well, which we do sell here at Sherlock Pages. But honestly, if you're a fan of art, if you want a really gripping narrative, fictional narrative, you want to learn about his life, and you've seen his artwork, but you don't know so much, this is absolutely wonderful. It was a really popular book club pick as well, actually. So yeah, Lust for Life by, I was going to say Vincent van Gogh, it's by Irving Stone. Number 8, Storyland by Amy Jeffs, who is a friend of the shop. Amy doesn't live far away and she often visits. I interviewed Amy in the churchyard here in Frome to hear all about this book, which is The Origin Myths of Britain. Amy is a really unique storyteller. So it tells the origin myths of Britain in almost a kind of mythological fairy tale style. And then at the end of the chapter, we are anchored in the real history, because Amy is an extraordinary historian as well as storyteller and artist, because these are liner cuts on the front of the book by Amy and throughout. So there's a lot of really talented liner cut artists in Frome, actually, for various reasons. Storyland. 7, I think, is The Offing by Benjamin Myers. Such a popular novel in the shop. Often people come in and they say, I want a novel that I'm going to enjoy, that's going to have some depth to it, but isn't going to be incredibly traumatic. And this is what we point them in the direction of, because it's a poignant story of a young man and his platonic friendship with an older lady in the north of England after the war. Really beautiful. The Offing. 6, The Last Quarter of the Moon by Jan. So this was a really satisfying book to sell, because we picked it out from the Vintage Earth series and people said, you know what, I've never seen that. I would have never have picked it up, but your description of it sounds really interesting and I'm going to give it a go. It's the story of the 20th century, as told through the eyes of one female member of the Evenki tribe in northeast China. It is an incredibly beautiful book. It references the stars, the landscape. History touches on the Evenki people dramatically, but you are really tied and anchored to this community. And what I found was that there's a deep humanity to it, because although the context of these people's lives is so far away from our own, I mean, there are shaman in this, there are traditional practices with which I knew nothing of. The characters are entirely familiar, and I'm sure if I go down the pub in Frome, I'll find some of them now. So it was just a really profound read, I would say, a quietly profound read. Last Quarter of the Moon. Number 5, Steeplechasing. Now, with my interests as a historic architecture nerd, maybe I pushed this one onto people, but actually Steeplechasing was a really big hit across the UK. Big bookshops like Waterstones had it in their window, so I'm not surprised it's been a big hit for Peter Ross. It's basically his travels around the Christian religious buildings of Britain. I really enjoyed it. There's a chapter on Gloucester Cathedral, which I particularly remember, where he's meeting with the stonemason. He's a real observer of characters. He doesn't dwell always too far inward. He's very generous in his descriptions of others and his adventures. So yeah, Steeplechasing. Read a chapter a night, stop scrolling, have a great time. Peter Ross. Number 4 is the book that actually partly inspired Sherlock Pages, The Old Ways by Robert Macfarlane, who I was really fortunate to meet just last week. You can check out last week's YouTube episode to hear a little bit more about that, and his upcoming book, Is a River Alive? But The Old Ways tells the story of the drove roads, the pilgrim routes, the ancient pathways that crisscross Britain. I think there's a few chapters that go abroad, but it's mainly in Britain. And there's just a magic to it. And Robert Macfarlane's writing is unlike anyone else. He just really brings things to life and turns them into pure poetry. And the reason this book was so important for me was because I used to spend my weekends or my days off often walking from parish to parish, church to church, just to get a sense of self and contemplation and calm. And I realised through convening with Robert Macfarlane's work how meaningful that was to me, and it opened up a whole world of literature actually, and really helped me in my own writing. So The Old Ways is one we always recommend. I was really pleased to see it on the list. Number 3 is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. So this is a really slim novella. Yeah, it is just so good. It tells the story of a young man who, after the war, goes up to Yorkshire to reveal a medieval wall painting, and it's about his relationships with the characters in that village. There's something about this novel, it sticks with people for their whole lives. So many people come in and see it and they grab it and they say, oh, I've got to reread this, or they recommend it to a friend and they're stuffing it in their chest, you know, saying you've got to read this. If you're trying to get back into reading, you want a small, satisfying, important novel, A Month in the Country is perfect. If you're an aspiring writer, it's such a lesson in how to say so much in so few words. Some of the sentences in here are absolutely astonishing. I must go through it actually. When I read books, I usually tabulate them where I've got favourite quotes or there's certain concepts that I would like to discuss in reviews. So I'll probably have to do that at some point with A Month in the Country this year, because honestly, there is treasure in this book. Second is Catherine May's Wintering, published a few years ago now and reappeared on the top 10 bestsellers list in the UK because it is a book that resonates with people. It's about the power of rest and retreat in the fallow months of the year, allowing us time to winter ourselves, allowing us space, not always to be perfect. And I think it's an important book for people, and they read it and they recommend it to friends, and it is one of those word of mouth bestsellers. I would really recommend Wintering by Catherine May if it sounds up your street. Perfect for this time of year as well, and a really good one to gift people. And then number 1, by far and away as well, our number 1 bestseller was Wild Atlantic Women by Grania Lyons. I mentioned our YouTube episode on it. Go check that out if you want to hear more about this. It is the story of, I think it's 11 women along the west coast of Ireland, the beautiful wild Atlantic way, the west coast of Ireland, and their histories, their stories. It goes from Tudor pirate queens to radical 19th century pioneering scientists to a big wave surfer in current times. So Grania is a really humble and modest person, but she has written a beautiful book here, and I know it's doing really well. I met with fellow booksellers in London last week, and I know, for example, the team at Toppings, which I'm a fan of, they've got it on their tables now. I've heard multiple customers say it made them cry. I think anyone who's into the outdoors, the environment, anyone perhaps with Irish connections, people who like stories of, you know, memoir, walking, pilgrimage, Wild Atlantic Women is going to be for them. And I know that Grania has more stories in her. There are books spinning out from this book. When you read it, you're thinking, oh, she could write a book on that or that. It's a real hidden gem as well, because not many bookshops in the UK were selling it when I found this and read it, and I was astonished when I read it. Honestly, it was ticking so many boxes for Sherlock and Pages, and it was so well done. So I'm an evangelist for this and the work of Grania Lyons, and I hope to always be so. So check it out. Okay, so I don't want to go on too long, but I thought I would just leave you with a few thoughts on what's next for Sherlock and Pages as we go into 2025. So we're going to do an event, and actually this is the first time I've told anyone about it. The reason I'm holding up my book, Forgotten Churches, is because it's been beautifully illustrated throughout. Hopefully I'll get one of those illustrations here. Yes, this is my favourite church of all time, actually, Dunstable Rouse in Gloucestershire. A sloping poem of the ages, as I think I write, something like that. It's got a Tudor bell coat, and then the nave has Saxon elements. It's got a Norman crypt down below in chancel. It's beautiful. But anyway, sorry, I'm waffling on, as I tend to do about churches. All of these illustrations, or many of them, we will have on show at the Silk Mill in Frome on the 21st to the 23rd of March. But wait on our Instagram or join our email list for more on that, and we'll announce it formally. But yeah, you're going to be able to come to Frome and see this, and we're going to have a pop-up kind of art and heritage themed bookshop at the Silk Mill, which is just 5 minutes away. The shop will be open as well, but I'll be over at the Silk Mill probably. And yeah, we're going to have a real celebration of the book and of Iwana's incredible illustrations for it. So looking forward to it. And we've got another couple of pop-ups this year planned. And we might even do some author events, but we'll certainly try and get more authors on our YouTube as well. My real focus for the year is to open up an editorial side for Sherlock Pages, be telling more stories about books, showing you the bookish life. So I'm committing to do this YouTube once a week, do an episode either in the shop or out and about visiting other bookshops, other sites with literary stories. You know, there might be a book that particularly inspires us to go to a landscape, and I can share that with you. So yes, we've launched on the website a section called the Somerset Review, which will be the hub for all of our information on sherlockandpages.com. So all of our book reviews, author interviews, YouTube videos, everything will be linked into there. And of course, we'll have the YouTube show as well. So I really am trying to make time for this. Fellow booksellers are helping me. As a team, we're kind of pulling together to make it possible, because I think it is easy to come into a bookshop and you just see the kind of spines facing towards you and you don't really know what they mean. So we try our best to try and tell the stories behind the books and do the hard work of kind of sifting through, curating and bringing them to life, I think. There are so many things written on my list, but I'm actually going to leave it there. More than anything, I'd love to hear more from you in the comments about what you would like to see and learn about Sherlock and Pages, the bookish life in general. What would you like the channel to focus on? What do you enjoy? And what I would like to know is, are you someone who found the shop through the YouTube channel or through other channels, or were you an existing customer? Because I just don't know, and this is all relatively new to us. We put on our author interviews last year, which were really good, but we didn't promote them too heavily. We just kind of did it for the fun of it and to have those to reference for customers who were buying the books. So we're trying to do something a bit different this year, and it's a strange world out there. So we'll see how it goes. Remember to subscribe and like as well. It really helps us. Thanks so much. And as we say here at Sherlock and Pages, long live the Hedgerows.